Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic, I almost said fangtastic, episode of S&M Radio. I am once again, oh, by the way, this is Shanon, in case you didn't know, and I am joined again this month by my good friend Mark. How are you tonight, sir?
I am doing very well. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, well, we started last month switching over to kind of just the exclusive horror movie theme of the show. We're going to continue that tradition, I guess, this month. And this month we're even switching it up again. So going from which we did last month ended up being over 2 hours long, which was probably way too long for a lot of people. We are shortening up the episodes, and actually starting this month, we're going to be putting out 2 episodes this month. So hopefully these only end up being like somewhere between half an hour and 45 minutes or so. Still the long form discussion format, and then going to be a couple songs at the beginning and in the end of the episode. So this episode, we are talking about Fright Night. And I really wanted to have some like really cool cheesy sound clip to go in there, like when I when I said Fright Night, and then Peter Vincent went, "Welcome to Fright Night," but I didn't have. I tried to find some, and it was the couple of sites that I went to either had a bazillion different sound bites for the movie or had like 3. So
Oh, really? Oh, that's too bad.
yeah, and then
That would have been cool.
it would have been cool. And if you are looking at movies that are like more than like 5 years old, you can find sound bites for them. But newer movies from like 2000 and well, probably like I guess almost 10 years old. Anything like really newer than 2005 doesn't really have sound clips readily available online. So we're going to go ahead and have a little bit of a discussion about Fright Night. And again, like I said last month, there's probably going to be plenty of spoilers. So if you haven't seen Fright Night yet, go ahead and hit the stop button. And it's on Netflix, or go to your local video store if you have one, or jump online and find it. So, hey, Mark, if you want to get the ball rolling.
Certainly. Yeah, Fright Night is actually it's actually one of my favorite vampire films. It came out in 1985. It's about Charlie Brewster. He's kind of your all-American kid, and he's got a girlfriend. He's really into horror movies, and one night while he's watching his favorite horror show, which is kind of like one of those classic horror hosted television shows where they play the old horror movies. He looks out his window and he sees that his new neighbor is moving in, and they're bringing a coffin. And it turns out that he has a vampire as a neighbor, and he investigates it, gets some help from his buddy Evil Ed, and that's a really interesting character, that's for sure. And then finds out that he believes he has a vampire that lives next door, so nobody believes him, so they decide to get the help of the horror host on the TV show he was watching, and that would be Peter Vincent, who's kind of like like a Elvira Svengoolie type character, and he's played by Roddy McDowall, and he comes to help him, and lo and behold, it turns out that yes, he does have a vampire next door. And I think it's one of the best vampire movies, certainly one of the best of the 80s. And I don't remember, being all that into it as a kid. I think I saw it a few times in like junior high, and it was all right. Wasn't a huge vampire fan, but then it's really grown on me in the last few years. So to me, it's like probably one of the best ones, certainly from the 80s. I know the only, one that the runner-up would be probably The Lost Boys. But yeah, this one is, it's got everything you could want in a horror movie. It's got the classic practical special effects, it's got the monster effects, which is kind of cool because this is one of those vampire movies. Because prior to this, I think this is one of the first vampire films that that they made in the 80s, because vampires kind of were passe at this point. Nobody really cared about them. And then the werewolf thing was right before it with like An American Werewolf in London, The Howling, and all of those. And, they took the special effects to a whole new level. And so this was kind of like the first time in, cinematic history that they were using those kind of special effects to show you what a vampire looked like. It was more than just the widow's peak and the fangs. It was, there was a transformation scene in Charlie's bedroom when the vampire, played by Chris Sarandon, he transforms in front of him. He gets the long fingers and the fingernails, and his head changes, his face, he gets the vampire creature look. So it had that going for it. Yeah, I think it's a great film. I really do. I enjoyed it. It's definitely, every October I have like my list of must-see horror movies, and this one is definitely in it now. It's a great flick.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I was trying to think of that the other day, and I think it's the first one really that had broken the Bela Lugosi / Christopher Lee vampire mold before the Lost Boys came about, which I think the Lost Boys would have been more of the what we would have. I even probably to this day still kind of deem as the influence for a lot of modern vampire movies.
Yeah.
But the one thing about this movie that I noticed, and I've noticed even still to this day when I watch it, is that all of the classic vampire lore is in the movie, and then even some of it probably what we consider to this day as being classic vampire lore, which they probably actually introduced a few of the things themselves. So stakes to the heart, vampires having no reflections, sunlight, holy water. And then I'm not even sure if it's, and this is the one where I'm not even sure if this was the first film where it was introduced or not, or if this was from before. But the killing of the head vampire turns anybody else who, while in this movie it was, if you weren't quite turned yet, then you didn't become a full vampire when the head vampire was turned, or was killed, I should say.
Yeah, and there was also the you had to be in order for the vampire to get into your house, he had to be welcomed.
Oh yeah, the owner of the dwelling had to invite you in.
There you go.
Which,
I thought that it had all of that stuff in it, and I think at this point, like you think of vampires, and we had so much of it with, like you said, like Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee, and then the Bela Lugosi vampires, like that's like the be all end all of vampires. That's how we saw vampires for so long, and it just really became so passé. And in the 80s, it wasn't that was the slasher phase. 85 when this film came out, that was kind of like right in the middle of. That was, right in the middle of the Friday the 13th series, the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Halloween had been out, and there had been a couple sequels already for that. So all of that was, and interestingly enough, too, Peter Vincent, played by Roddy McDowall, as we said, he even has a line in there when Charlie, the main character, goes into, get his help, to fight off this vampire, and he asks him about this, and his show had just got canceled, and he says something along the lines of, the kids nowadays, all they care about is slashers, the guy in the mask killing virgins, and nobody cares about vampires anymore. And that was real. I mean, that really was the way it was in 1985. I mean, yeah, it was over.
Well, speaking of that, just to kind of sidetrack a little bit, so today is November 9th, is when we're recording. Do you know what today is?
I do not.
Today is the 30th anniversary of Nightmare on Elm Street being released.
Are you serious? Really? Wow. That is very interesting.
So I just when you, as soon as you said that about him saying that, I was like, oh wait, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Nightmare on Elm Street. What that came out probably a year before this. Then yeah, the first one was '84, I believe.
yep,
So
yep.
that was so then this came out in '85, and yeah, that was the big thing was the slasher craze, and so vampires were, I mean, who was thinking about vampire films at this point? But yeah, I remember that's probably one of the reasons I didn't really care about it back then. Because I don't I the big thing was the Freddy Kruegers and the Jason Voorhees, and then all those type of characters were far more interesting than vampires. But I do remember the cover art for this film. I remember going to the old classic mom and pop video stores back then and seeing that cover art with the like the ghoul with the fangs kind of hanging over the this big like cloud sort of depiction of it hanging over the house, and that always kind of stuck with me. So I think I originally saw that this film like it aired on like HBO or Cinemax or one of those cable channels back in the day.
Yeah, I was trying to even think too of when the first time was that I saw this, and I can't really even remember. But I do know, like even from watching it now, um, the one thing that I did notice that it is kind of campy, and
Oh yeah.
it is funny, and it's even funny at parts of the movie where I'm not sure if they intended it to be funny or not.
Like which parts were you thinking?
Oh, just some of the just I mean some of the stuff is just like and possibly now too. It's because it's been 30 years since it came out, and when you watch it now, you're like, oh, that's kind of cheesy, or that's kind of
Right.
So
Oh
I'm not
yeah.
sure if some of that stuff was done on purpose or not.
Well, I think of when you think of like the comedy or the kind of strangeness of the film, the Evil Ed character, that kid, who they had to play him. His name is escaping me at the moment.
Stephen Jeffries.
Stephen Jeffries. Okay, yeah, and he actually, I mean, he was a very interesting character. I mean, I could totally picture the casting of that guy when he came in, with that really bizarre voice he had, and that kind of, that I don't know, like that sort of squealy, high pitch voice. But yeah, he went on to do the 976 Evil films, which I never saw that film, or there's a sequel to it as well, and I never saw those. Um, but yeah, that character, and he was he kind of had like some comedic parts. Then Peter Vincent, he was sort of like the reluctant, hero of the story. Didn't want to, kind of the cowardly lion. And I guess actually that's what Roddy McDowall, when he took on the role, that's kind of the character he was going for when he was trying to depict who Peter Vincent would be. He was going to be more of just a coward. He based it off of the Cowardly Lion from The Wizard of Oz, and he's very, he's always frightened. Everything scares him, and he doesn't really believe in this stuff, although he pretends he does on TV. But yeah, the Peter Vincent character is actually probably one of the last few years when I started rewatching this film, something really kind of connected with me with that particular character. I'm a big fan of the Svengoolie show, and this is kind of one of those type horror host types like that, and the late night thing. And I remember, I mean, like the Charlie Brewster character and the Evil Ed, that was kind of like you and me back in the day. We were kids that were just into horror movies, and we'd watch them on late night shows and all that stuff, and and then Peter Vincent, being I thought it was kind of neat because here's this guy who, he depicts himself to be this vampire hunter, and he's got all these classic weapons, the stakes, and then all the things you need, and he does this horror host show, and he was, he was previously an actor, who was in these movies that very much like the Hammer films. And actually Peter Vincent, the name, they took it from Peter Cushing and Vincent Price, which were like two of the main characters or the actors who played in these old Hammer horror films. And but he's just this guy who knows all about vampires because of his life and his career as a in horror movies, and so he's naturally the guy that Charlie chooses as, okay, this guy's an expert in horror movies and vampires, so he's going to know how to kill a vampire. So that's the guy he goes to. So I always thought that was kind of cool. It's like if you're going to go if you find out your neighbor's a vampire, who are you going to go to? Well, of course you're going to go to the horror host, the local horror host who, has been in every vampire movie you ever saw. So yeah, I always loved the Peter Vincent character.
Yeah, the one thing that we should probably mention is you mentioned Svengoolie a couple of times. So those of you who are not in the Midwest area, Svengoolie is he is a horror host from the Chicago area, who's actually you can actually, depending on who your cable provider is or what local stations you have. This is a shameless plug. Maybe I should try to get him to be a sponsor on the show. But his show broadcasts on MeTV on Saturday nights at 9 o'clock. I think is usually Central Time. Yeah, is usually when it broadcasts on, and they play old Universal movies for the most part.
Yeah, it's pretty much all old Universal, all that kind of that era, black and white stuff. But yeah, he is Roddy McDowall. Who I wasn't very familiar with as an actor. I mean, he's been in a few things. The Planet of the Apes movies, the old Planet of the Apes films. What was that Disney film? Was it Bedknobs and Broomsticks or something like that? I've seen bits and pieces of that. So, he had a pretty, solid career. I think he was even a child actor at one time. But yeah, he, really kind of portrayed this character in kind of a fun-loving way, sort of like. He's sort of the the old wizard of the story, the old man with the knowledge, and I like when they introduce him later, or when you see where he's living. He lives in an apartment and he's going to get evicted, and so when these Charlie's friends go to seek this guy out to help them convince Charlie that their neighbor isn't a vampire, he doesn't want anything to do with it, and the Charlie's girlfriend, who was played by Amanda Bierce, by the way, who I knew immediately as and who I just can't get it out of my head, she is from Married with Children. What is the character's name again? I'm drawing a blank.
She was the neighbor.
She was the neighbor, yes. The neighbor's wife. And I can't think. Oh, what was her name?
I don't know. If you give me like 4 seconds, I'll be able to tell you.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw this film. Marcy, that's right, Marcy.
Marcy Darcy.
And there you go. And she was, when I first saw this film in the late 80s, because it was on cable, I remember seeing her. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the lady from Married with Children. So she, anyhow, going back to what I was saying, she ends up paying him like $500, Peter Vincent, to go help out, and he instantly, as soon as money is involved, he takes it, and and then goes and helps them out. But the Peter Vincent character to me is, I don't know, for some reason that particular character really sticks with me as sort of the, one of those classic horror characters that I almost put him. I don't want to go this far. I don't know if it really would be that good of an idea or if that's a good comparison, but almost like Dr. Loomis from the Halloween series, where he's just kind of an iconic character. When you see him, it brings you back to that period of time in that film, and it's like, yep, that guy, he's the one who kind of held this story together.
Seems like a bit of a stretch even for you.
It could be.
The one thing, there's one thing that about the Peter Vincent character that has always bugged me in this movie, and this is something just for you to keep in the back of your mind the next time you watch this movie.
Okay.
Is it? He's like this not elderly isn't probably the right word, but this older, supposed to be like gray / white haired man, struggling in his whatever, midlife crisis kind of thing. But his hair, it looks like all that they went to like Walgreens or the Halloween Express or whatever, and like, oh, let's get some hairspray stuff to spray his hair, and they found a can of that snow stuff you spray in windows and stuff in the wintertime, and like shot it all over his head. I mean, that's what it looks like. It looks like he's just got like frosted hair in the movie, and it's like all on his forehead and temples and stuff.
You are totally dead on. Yeah, there is something really wrong with his hair. I mean, I keep looking at his hair and I'm wondering to myself, is he wearing a wig? Because that's an awful lot of hair for a guy of his age. And I'm thinking, like, is he wearing a wig? Is it what's with? And then the color is weird, and it almost looks like, and I don't know if this was intentional, but if you look at his hair, it looks kind of like they made him look like he's some sort of like relic, or like he. I mean, to me, like when you look at him, it looks like like you just pulled him out of a dusty closet, and you got to like take off the dust off of him.
Yep. Yeah. So it was kind of like, oh, we got all this money for special effects over there, and we got all this stuff, and we're gonna do all this stuff, and oh, his hair is brown. We need to make it white. Anybody got white spray paint?
Yeah. Right.
And this is the only thing that to this day, even now, even bugs me actually even more, which is kind of odd. So, Evil Ed, who, if you remember, like in the movie, like everybody calls him Evil, but for whatever reason he doesn't like that nickname.
He hates it. He hates
calling me evil. And so he gets turned. I said there was going to be spoiler alert. Sorry. So he gets turned. If you remember, so they go confront the neighbor, Jerry Dandridge, and Peter Vincent, does his old trick that they tell him to do: look in your mirror and see if he has a reflection. And he's got this, for whatever reason, he's got a compact with him. I don't know if he needs to put blush on or whatever, but he takes it out when they're leaving the house, and he sees that Mr. Dandridge doesn't have a reflection, so he's like, oh, I'm not helping anymore. And so they go and take off, and then for whatever reason, Charlie and Evil and Amy, Charlie's girlfriend, are walking through these alleyways in the city, and Evil all of a sudden decided that he's had enough and he's not going to partake in it anymore. So he goes down this alleyway and gets attacked by Dandridge, and then turns him into a vampire. But for some reason, which I still do not understand, he shapeshifts into a wolf.
He does, yes. Very good. Yeah, I forgot about that part. Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know if that, like, going back to what you said, if that was just a thing, like they were like, oh, American Werewolf in London was so huge that we kind of got to still play off of that a little bit, or what the deal was. But it wasn't. He wasn't a werewolf. He turned into a Twilight wolf.
Like, well, yeah,
it was a wolf.
Something much better than a Twilight wolf, though. Let's.
Well, I mean, he was first. A wolf. And, like, when he got killed, it was then he did the untransformation, but still, yes. I mean, he still turned into a wolf.
He did, yeah. And I'm not sure what that was about. I don't know if that was maybe some sort of vampire lore about shape-shifting that I'm not familiar with. But yeah, he kind of had the vampire thing going on. The makeup effects, and kind of like Jerry had, where his head was sort of, his face was exaggerated features and
right.
the things and all that.
And they did turn into bats in that movie too.
Oh yes, they did. And then he does become a wolf, and then Peter Vincent ends up sticking a stake in his heart, and then that we believe kills him for the most part, at least for that part of the film, and then he goes back to being a human, and it's kind of an interesting transformation. All practical effects, all before the computer stuff, and it's a little cheesy, some of those shots, but it's still fun to watch. But then they go back to the house. Jerry ends up seducing, and I thought that scene to me where Jerry, so they get out of the alley, Jerry's kind of chasing them. They end up in a nightclub, which is so 80s, with the 80s music playing, and Jerry's in the nightclub. He seduces Amy. Amy being played by Amanda Bierce. This is
Darcy.
Charlie's girlfriend, and then there's the big seduction thing. The vampire seduces the girl. I thought that scene. I thought that was really well played. I really did. I thought the guy who played Jerry, Chris Sarandon, did an excellent job. And by the way, Chris Sarandon, just a few other things he's been in. He was in The Princess Bride. He was like one of the main characters, like the bad guy of that one. And he was also in Child's Play. He was the police officer. So any of you horror fans out there who, probably will recognize him in Child's Play, which was also directed by the same director as who did Fright Night, and that would be Tom Holland, I believe. So, but yeah, so that seduction scene was excellent, and then he ends up seducing Amy, brings her back to his abode, which is the old house. And we never talked about the helper guy. What'd you think of that guy? He has a specific name. It's escaping me at the moment.
Yeah, I didn't really think he was too much of anything, honestly. Billy Cole. Yeah, that was he was like the. He reminds me of is Bill Paxton.
Yeah, he kind of had that going for him, I guess. Yeah, he also had a very 80s look to him for some reason. I don't know why I think that, but like looking back at the mid 80s, like people looked like that. I know that sounds strange, but for some reason he had that kind of look where you'd see people. I don't know, maybe it was his spiky hair or something.
Yep. Just so all you listeners out there who are not over the age of 25, everybody in mid-80s looked like Bill Paxton from
they did.
Aliens.
They
actually
did.
Came out, and when did that come out? 81?
Aliens was 86.
Yeah, so there you go. Everybody looked like Bill Paxton in Aliens.
Everybody looked like either Bill Paxton or I don't know, what do you think Jerry looked like? Jerry had a very 80s look to him, and so did Charlie, and then so what'd you think of the transformation of Amy's character? I mean, she went from the short hair, which was kind of like a sort of a kind of a conservative-ish look to her, and then she went all of a sudden when she was a vampire, she had her hair must have grown or something, because she all of a sudden had long hair and looked like 10 times better as a vampire than she did.
She did look better, but I didn't get the whole why her hair grew out. And then not only why it grew out, but then when she when the head vampire Jerry was killed at the end of the movie, why she went back to her old self.
Did she go back to short hair?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Did she really? Okay.
Yep.
Weird. No, that is strange. Maybe the short hair didn't look good with the vampire makeup or something. She did look about 10 times better with long hair.
Yeah, and she's one of those people too. I mean, to kind of go off a little bit, but Amanda Bierce, I think that she had that like shortish kind of hair her entire life. Because I think now she still even has that short hair. I mean, she had that short hair when she was always on Married with Children. So she's just one of those people. And I mean, there's and she's not the only one too. There's a couple other people too where you see that you're like, oh, if you had longer hair, you'd probably look really good. And then you see them for whatever reason, like wearing a wig or something else, and you're like, see, I told you, you look great. And then,
yeah, that was funny because I remember, as soon as she turns into a vampire, she looks pretty attractive, and she wasn't, she's okay, kind of, cute girl, what have you, with the short hair, but yeah, the vampire look was really good on her. But yeah, the end of the film, Jerry goes back with Peter Vincent and convinces him to come back with him, and then they go in and go after the head vampire, Jerry, and there's kind of a battle. A lot of crucifixes are thrown out. He turns into a bat, and it's nighttime is turning to day. He has to get back to his coffin, ends up in the coffin, and they find it hidden in the basement in like a secret room, and of course they got to stake him. They find out that by breaking the glass, because all the basement windows are painted black, by breaking the glass windows in the basement, it lets sunlight in, and then we get the big final ending where the vampire gets killed, which to me was really awesome. I mean, that whole ending, the vampire, the bat, all the monster effects, all of that was great. And I remember actually that the scene where Peter Vincent is like, I think it's either Peter or Charlie holding off the bat like with a stick or something, and it's like biting the stick. I remember that picture specifically from a couple copies of Fangoria magazine back in the day. They had that picture like on the front cover, and I never knew what the movie was about, and then I remember seeing the movie and like, oh yeah, I read about that in Fangoria. So that was kind of cool when I first saw it, to see those scenes. But I thought the whole ending was great, and then all those monster effects. To me, like that era when they were doing everything practically like that with rubber, latex, and all of that stuff, I thought that worked so much better. It seemed so much more real than if it had been just computer generated images.
I agree completely. Yeah. So yeah. So ended with him blowing up when he got into the sunlight and stuff, which we've seen a few times since then in other movies that I'm sure we'll cover on here. I think most notably would be John Carpenter's Vampires.
I've never seen that film. I'm going to have to watch that film.
Yeah, probably should, because I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about it at some point.
Excellent. Well, I gotta hit all the Carpenter films.
So just to wrap stuff up here, so a couple years after Fright Night came out, Fright Night 2 came out with somewhat of the same cast. The kid who played Charlie was back. Peter Vincent was back, and then everybody else was all new and stuff. And the Fright Night Part 2 came out I believe in 88. And
yep, 88.
If the horror movie sequel had not already been established when this movie had come out, I am pretty sure that no horror movies ever would have had sequels. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that this sequel would have wrecked sequels for every movie ever. It was horrible. I mean, absolutely horrible.
I haven't seen it since, junior high, so I'm going to have to eventually go back.
Well, it was kind of like, so you remember, back in the 80s, Evil Dead came out, which was really, really low budget, and then like a couple years later, they got some money, and then they made Evil Dead 2, but instead of making Evil Dead 2, they just remade Evil Dead, pretty much is what they did.
Oh, yeah?
So that's kind of what they were kind of doing with like Fright Night 2, because it was kind of like the same premise. So in Part 1, Peter Vincent lived in this rundown apartment building and was getting kicked out. Well, for some reason, even though his show was still being canceled, in Part 2, he lived in this fancy apartment building, and then instead of the vampires moving next door to Charlie, they were moving next door to Peter Vincent.
Okay, so they really switched it up, didn't they?
Yeah, but I mean, the movie was horrible. I mean, it was just really bad.
Yeah, and that's a pretty difficult one to find, from what I understand, too.
Well, you could actually, if you just go to YouTube and search for it, it's where I watched the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess it's not in this age.
Yeah, if you want to own it on DVD, yeah, then it's like $60 on eBay.
Ooh.
But I'm pretty sure that like that movie is probably, you remember, because a favorite of yours, Curtains.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which I still am not sure if it's ever got a standalone release on DVD.
It has. It actually was just released last year.
Okay, because I remember like a couple of years ago, it was like in one of those, whatever, like 10 movie horror packs or whatever you could buy at Walmart for like $5. But
that's right. Yeah, and it was there as well. Yeah, but it did get its official release finally.
Cool. Yeah, that's probably where you can find
sure someday.
Yeah. But yeah, that's probably where Fright Night 2 is at. It's probably like it's on some DVD pack at Walmart in the $5 bin.
Yeah,
The
right.
the 12
With
worst
like Chud.
vampire movies ever made.
Yep. Now, one last thing I want to say too about I know we're kind of wrapping up right now, but the character Charlie was played by William Ragsdale, and I don't know if he didn't really have much of a career. He did Fright Night 2, but he was in a TV show that I remember watching, like, and I think it was either the late 80s or early 90s, called Herman's Head. Do you remember that show at all?
Not at all.
No? Okay. It was like I won't go into it too much, but it was like basically some guy working at an office, and they would they would basically show what was going on inside his head, and there'd be like, actors saying, kind of making decisions like, oh, what should I go this way or that way or whatever, and then the story would basically be about whatever they told him his head was telling him to do. But it was just kind of a cheesy, late 80s, early 90s TV show. I don't think it lasted very long. It's probably on the Fox network or something like that. But yeah, that I remember when he came on that, it was like, oh wow, okay, there's the guy from Fright Night. He's got his own TV show now. And then that he kind of, at least from my perspective, he disappeared at that point.
Interesting.
And I bet you that show is probably harder to find than Fright Night 2.
Maybe, probably. All right, so I think that wraps up our discussion about Fright Night.
Fright Night.